where executive producer Sam Osterhout and I talk to you about what's coming up on Lincoln Square this week, the latest headlines, and what we can all do to fight back against authoritarianism. Coming up, we will have Joe Sudbay. He is a host on SiriusXM Progress. You saw him last week on our State of the Union coverage. We're going to be talking with him about some of the very important upcoming special elections in our future. But of course, before then, Sam, we've got to talk about the Iran war. I know that many of our viewers have been sticking with us all weekend for our special coverage with Bobby Jones, our military expert who is a former Navy commander. And he really broke down what the situation is over there. Invaluable to have him. But Sam, I know you have family over in Iran. You've been watching things very closely. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this developing war now that we're about 72 hours in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm no expert. Some of my non-Iranian friends have asked, like, well, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? What do Iranians believe? Like, how do they feel? And I'm like, well, ask an American who they want for president, and you'll get a million different answers, right? And the Iranian diaspora and Iranians in country have existed through this for decades and decades, and so there's no one answer. In fact, there was a lot of mourning for the Supreme Leader over the weekend because he still has, a not insignificant amount of support in country. By some estimates, 20%. He's got a sort of baseline 20% of Iranians in Iran who still support him. I know there are a lot of Iranians here who are really, really, really celebrating. But that's not to say that many of them are under some illusion that this is now perfect. It's a mess. And I think that you can say the death of this despot and autocrat and terrible human being is ultimately a good thing. The way it was brought about was messy and meant to stoke chaos, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So since we were last with you on Sunday morning, we have found out that now the death toll for U.S. service members is up to 4. There are others who are seriously injured. The conflict has widened to Lebanon. Kuwait actually mistakenly shot down U.S. jets, and the Dow opened up down 250 points. Pete Hegseth, our so-called Secretary of War, just gave a press conference allegedly to update us, but I'm not sure that I really learned a lot, Sam. I think we have a couple clips from there. Why don't we hear what his take is on things and what we can expect in the coming weeks?
Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. He's saying no nation-building quagmire. In other words, no plan.
Right.
No plan other than to
you're
destroy.
On your own, Iranians. We told you that we would have your backs when you were rising up, and so many of you were being beaten and killed. And now it's, hey, we're going in and bombing stuff, and you can clean up the mess afterwards.
Exactly. And I think that there are a couple of things here. And the first is that, yes, of course, the Trump administration has no strategic plan. They didn't have a mission. They didn't have a goal. They didn't have actual concrete objectives other than to really just unleash fury on this country. They've killed children. They've killed civilians. They're making a mess of it. And they'll continue until, they run out of guns, or I don't know, until some date when they decide they're not going to continue anymore, or when Netanyahu decides they shouldn't continue anymore. But I will say they have also, and this was reported fairly broadly across particularly Iranian media and Iranian journalists abroad, that they've also targeted the Supreme Leader's opposition. So there is a person named Reza Pahlavi, who's the son of the previous Shah, the
Who was
exiled Shah.
overthrown in 1979.
Exactly. Who was also bolstered by the CIA. Now, one of the reasons for the overthrow was because the Shah was seen as being too aligned with the West and not aligned enough with Iranian interests internally. So again, the CIA fucked everything up, right? And every Iranian knows that. And now they're trying to, with the help of Netanyahu, push for the Shah. And there's a big, shiny marketing campaign. I think a lot of you will probably see on your Instagram, just normal, everyday Iranians from LA or from wherever, talking about how wonderful it will be to have a monarchy again. And I want you to be wary of that. Clearly, there's somebody has to fill a vacuum. Just be cautious about who Netanyahu and Trump decide they want to run this country.
Yeah. Well, Sam, one thing that we were talking about before we came on air, you and I have both lived through the Persian Gulf War, the Iraq War in 2003. George W. Bush got a huge bump from the Iraq War, and that pretty much sealed his reelection in 2004. Trump is not experiencing that. He didn't after his invasion of Venezuela at the beginning of the year, where they conducted the coup and kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, the very violent president over there. But I was really struck by some of the poll numbers that have come out. Reuters has some numbers after the conflict broke out. Only 27% of Americans support the US's war with Iran. I mean, that is lower than Trump's like baseline support. He always has like a solid 35% of the country, 35 to 40. He can't even get his own base on board for this war. I mean, this is a war waged by an unpopular president. And a lot of people are also really wary of how many times Trump has taken us into conflicts. Mr. No More Wars. This is his 8th adventure, and he's only been back in office for about a year. 56% think that Trump is too trigger happy. He's too willing to use military force. I mean, we heard from Pete Hegseth. I mean, these are guys who think it's really cool to go in and bomb stuff. I mean, they don't really show any sign of slowing down.
No. And look, I think that this is where we talked about 2003 and the lead up to Iraq, and a lot of protests, a lot of global protests, but the Bush administration did their sort of diligence, even though they were lying about all of it, to sell this war. And in fact, they use that kind of language. We need to roll out this product now. The time to launch a new concept is here, and so on and so forth. They really looked at it as a kind of McKinsey style exercise in selling something. Trump has no sales right with this. And I think that actually shows he's never made the case, because there actually is no case. He said, we need to keep Americans safe. And so far, it has done the opposite, right? I know naval bases are like going into lockdown. Police presence in cities is increasing. He's increased our potential for terrorism in country.
Yes, let's. I think we have Frank Figluzzi's column for us today, where he's talking about how the FBI is already stretched so thin. There was a mass killing in Austin, Texas, that looks like it might be related to terrorism with Iran, and there are other incidents as well that are being investigated. And this is something that Bobby was talking about as well. I mean, we know that our bases in the Middle East have been targeted by Iran, but Americans here at home could become targets as well, and they may have already been targets. I mean, this is far more dangerous for Americans and for people around the world than many other conflicts that we have gotten involved in. Here's a map of where Iran has already targeted attacks. You have cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi. They're just, that's where the richest people in the entire world go on vacation. And these places have been sold as completely safe havens in the Middle East. And you're seeing a 7-star hotel bombed in Dubai. Yeah. I mean, this is something that a lot of people are not used to seeing.
And to be fair, I don't think Trump or Hegseth anticipated any of this, because they don't have that sort of vision. And think about this: in 2003, the negative effects of the Gulf and the Iraq War were sort of elongated, right? Like you could see, you could predict that it was going to be a quagmire, and a lot of people did. But you didn't understand the sort of cultural, global, political, violent impacts of this war, except stretched out through the months and months. This is we're 48 hours in, and this is already not good. And people see that it's not good. And there's already terrorism happening potentially in Texas. The effects of this are negative, and they're immediate. Perhaps there will be, like for me, I think I'm really fascinated to see how this plays out over the coming months and years, but Trump isn't in it for that. Right. And I want to point to one other thing. We were in 2003 at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. They were regional neighbors, right? Now we're in Venezuela. We're in Iraq, or in Iran.
Syria.
We're in Syria. This is, the best thing that could be said about the Afghan and Iraq wars were that it was regional. We've extended ourselves globally. It's a terrible mistake.
We will definitely be following more of these developments in Iran. Please stay with us. But we do want to turn our attention to some of our upcoming elections, because we do have some really critical races tomorrow. 3 states, Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas, have critical primary elections, and they will set the stage for a lot of the midterms this year. Let's go ahead and bring Joe Sudbay in. He is a political strategist and host of State of the States on SiriusXM Progress. I can't really think of a better person to come on and break down what's going on with these elections. Hey, Joe.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Joe.
Man, I have to tell you, though, when we decided to have this conversation last week and where we are now, it's a different world. But there are special elections. There are primaries tomorrow. The big days are primary days in Texas and North Carolina. The marquee race, so to speak, are the Texas Senate primaries. On the Democratic side, you have James Talarico, state representative, versus Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. There will be someone who gets 50% there. So Democrats will have a nominee. The Republican side is just a mess. And I got to tell you, I love it. I know everyone seems to know by now, but like the contenders are, there's a Congressman, Wesley Hunt. He's kind of also ran. The incumbent senator, John Cornyn, who Republicans have spent about $65 million, probably more on, to boost his chances. And he's still polling around 30%. And then arguably the most corrupt member of politics, any politics in the country, the Attorney General, Ken Paxton. There's a big intro war because some of Trump's advisors are advising Cornyn and making bank on that. I mean, if you're at a campaign that's spending 60 million, 65 million, you're going to buy a big house. And then Steve Bannon is hardcore for Ken Paxton, who
he was impeached by the House a few years ago, right?
Yeah, he was impeached
by the Texas House,
the Texas Republican-controlled House.
Right.
He was not convicted in the Senate. His then wife was a senator. She had to excuse herself, but she had to listen to all the horrible things he had done, including the affair he was having back then. But apparently she's divorcing him now because of the affair he was having more recently, biblical reasons. Very, like, I don't care what people do in their personal lives, but Ken Paxton spends an inordinate amount of time worrying what people are doing in their private lives, particularly the LGBTQ community and women across Texas and America. So
now, haven't we been waiting on corruption charges for him for like over 5 years, and there has been no progress on this?
Well, he was indicted for securities fraud in 2015. That case was settled. And then the FBI was investigating him based on reports from his own staffers. But, the FBI right now, what is it besides, an Uber service for Kash Patel's girlfriend in Nashville? Which is really not a good thing for us right now.
We're taking him to go to Milan to celebrate the men's hockey team win.
Right. So also in Texas, there are the Texas redistricted. Obviously, they gerrymandered. That was big news last summer. And of course, they never, ever, ever expected Democrats to do the rebuttal that they have, certainly in California and in Virginia. And Virginia has a ballot measure April 21st. And it's early voting in Virginia starts March 6th. So this was the ballot measure that would allow them to redistrict for just until the end of the decade. And it would go from having a 6-5 margin in Virginia to a 10-1 margin. So they'd pick up 4 seats if everything goes well. So that's not tomorrow's elections, but it's coming up really quick. And I the way I feel about it is, Virginia's doing that for the rest of us. So we got to help Virginia make sure that they can do it. And I got to give a shout out to Speaker Don Scott, who was brilliant, helped them pick up 13 seats, and he kind of choreographed this whole thing. So, but let's go back to tomorrow in Texas. There's the redistricting, a number of competitive House races, U.S. House races. But the thing that I'm most excited about in Texas is there are 150 seats in the Texas House of Representatives. Democrats have candidates in every single one of them. They have candidates in every single Senate race. Senate's much smaller. North Carolina, same thing. North Carolina Democrats will field candidates in every single House race and every single Senate race. And one of the reasons I think this is important, remember in North Carolina in 2024, Harris and Walz didn't win, but they got the governor's office, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, superintendent of education, and they won a Supreme Court seat by about 800 votes. And when you have candidates, Democratic candidates running in every district, it helps find those Democrats. And I think that is one of the reasons why Abigail Spanberger, her turnout in Virginia surpassed the 2018 blue wave turnout. And they had 100 candidates running in those 100 seats. So I get geekily excited about that, Susan and Sam. I admit it. So we'll know the field for the most part. Oh, the one other thing I forgot to mention about the United States Senate race, I mentioned there will be a winner on the Democratic side. They'll clear 50%. On the Republican side, you have to get to 50%. It's not going to happen. So they're going to have another 10 weeks of this brutal battle, probably between Cornyn and Paxton, and just get the popcorn because it's going to be ugly. There is a special election tomorrow in Little Rock, North Little Rock, House District 70. Alex Halliday is a great guy. I got to talk to him twice on State of the States. He ran in 2024 and lost by about 250 votes. So he's on the ballot to pick up. This would be a Democratic pickup in Arkansas tomorrow. So really, so big day tomorrow, and we'll pick up a lot. I mean, I think I got to talk to Alex for this weekend show, and he said, get out the vote's been going great. He's actually on the ballot twice. He's on for the primary for this fall, and he's on to fill the vacant seat. So
special. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had, and you've talked about it, we've had some great special election turnouts, even on the State of the Union. We were chatting on State of the Union night, and I kind of feel like there was so much focus on what was happening in the Capitol, but there were two huge wins in Pennsylvania, massive overperformances on both sides of the state. So that's again, that we're seeing a lot of that in special elections. And I'll just say one other thing. When I talk to candidates, and I talked to Caleb McCoy, who's running in a special election in Pennsylvania on March 17th, and there's also a special in Florida on March 24th, House District 87, Emily Gregory. She literally had to sue to get DeSantis to schedule this this race because he wouldn't do it. He kept dragging it out. But I get to ask them, and the same thing with Alex, what are you hearing on the doors? And I feel like that's some of the best information because it's unfiltered, right? And one thing about state ledge candidates is you can't go in with, corny statements or, some kind of, you have to be real because people have bullshit detectors, right? And the one thing they still keep talking about is affordability. In Florida, it's housing and insurance. In Pennsylvania, Alex was very clear about healthcare costs and losing rural healthcare. But there's always a but also it's the chaos, it's the confusion, it's the corruption, it's all of that is really resonating with people. I've had candidates now start talking about how when they're at the doors, people want to talk about ICE and what ICE is doing in their communities. So this is really resonating with people around the country. And I think that's really important because I kind of feel like you can get, you talked about polling, what we're seeing polling on Iran already. And, you can be inside the DC bubble and, get a warped view of where people are. And a lot of it's filtered through consultants and everything else. That's why these state legislative candidates, they actually talk to people every day. They knock hundreds, thousands of doors. So it's really, I find it really fascinating and really important information.
Joe, I know that you have been tracking elections for such a long time. Can you give us can you zoom out a bit, give us the big picture of how significant the Democratic performance in these special elections, these off-year elections have been since Donald Trump was inaugurated a second time? Because it's not just that Democrats are on a really big streak. I mean, the margins have been margins that I personally have not seen.
Right. The Dow Ballot, which is a terrific publication, daily publication, they do a podcast. David Neer's the publisher. They track this, and Democrats have been overperforming by about 13% in special elections, which is huge. That's huge. And so even when I was talking to Emily Gregory this week from Florida, she said, look, hers a very competitive district. She can do a pickup. She said they've had 9 special elections, and even where the Democrats didn't win, they overperformed massively. And, a lot of these folks are running in gerrymandered districts. So when you see that kind of overperformance, and I think certainly the elections last November really mattered, but the election that really seemed to freak out Republicans is the Tennessee 7, which was last December. Afton Bain overperforming 13 points in a race where Republicans spent millions because they saw that she was doing some movement. She only lost by 9 points, and it really sent shockwaves through Republicans because if that's happening in the turnout, and this is, I think, a key point, because a lot of times you can dismiss special elections and say, well, that's just because Democrats showed up or this happened. But that turnout in Afton's race matched the turnout in 2022, the last kind of midterms. So you're actually talking, you can make an apples to apples comparison. So if you're a Republican who's in a district that Trump might have won by 13, 14, 15 points in 2024, you have to worry now, because they're not going to, those aren't the priority races. Like, they're not going to be able to dump $5 million into every single one of these races to save Republicans. So I feel like it's this interesting thing. I feel like, and I say this a lot, I feel like, you can get mired in DC, and Elliot Morris had some polling last week that showed Democratic voters want Democrats to fight. And I feel like you see more of that outside of the Beltway, and you also see the voters understanding the assignment. They know that the way to make change is to show up at the ballot box in numbers that aren't usually what we see. And we've seen that time after time after time. Starting in early January of last year, when Democrats overperformed in Virginia. And then the big one was Mike Zimmer winning in late January of 2025 in a district that Trump won by 24 points, and Mike won it by 4 points. And that kind of set the stage, and it's continued since then.
So I have so many questions. So many questions. I love this, that Democrats are running everywhere. Because you're right, they can't. The Republicans can't afford to spend $5 million in a typically safe red district, and that has downstream effects for all of the other races. It's really a magical moment for Democrats, and a terrible moment for the country, because we're in this position in the first place. I wonder. I want to talk about, or I want you to go on a limb and call Texas Senate Dem race for tomorrow. Let's start there.
I when I say this, I'm not just trying to deny. I just don't know. I really don't know. I've seen polls show that Crockett can win. I've seen polls show that Talarico can win. He got a big boost from the Colbert incident. And the other thing is, turnout has been off the charts in Texas on the Democratic side for early voting. There's voting tomorrow as well. So I kind of follow some folks in Texas, and it seems like they don't know either. The usual suspect, the usual people who I'd look to say, who's going to pull this off? No one seems to know. So I think that's going to be a real surprise. Either one of them can win. They're both terrific. I mean, I love Jasmine Crockett. I've interviewed Talarico a couple of years ago. He's he's very clear in who he is, and his faith comes across. So I really don't know, Sam. And that, that's politics at its best in a way.
Can you talk with us a little bit about the dynamics of that primary? Because it's gotten pretty heated, and especially supporters of Crockett and Talarico, they're going at it on Blue Sky. There's, an ongoing debate. Who's the real progressive? Who's the one who can really win? There's been a battle with a lot of prominent endorsements for both. How do you see this, in terms of what their politics are, what the electability argument is really about, Joe?
Yeah, I hate the electability argument. I think anyone can be elected under the right circumstances. And one thing for too long, I've heard kind of Democrats in Texas say, it's not that Texas is a red state, it's a non-voting state. And a lot of people don't vote. It's the other thing people forget about Texas. It's a majority minority state.
It is.
So I think the dynamics in Texas are very fluid. And I do think both of them bring great strengths to a general election. One of the things that's been interesting about Texas, remember after the election in 2024, there was the idea that Latino voters were going to be Republican, and Trump did well in some of the border communities. The past few weeks, the Southern Texas home builders have been storming DC, telling Trump and any Republican who will listen, you'll never get Latino votes again. You'll never win in South Texas because of this immigration attack and assault you've done on our communities. We can't find workers anymore. So I think that whoever wins that primary has a lot of potential to expand the base. And, I think getting out the vote is going to be crucial. And I think both of them have the capacity to do it. And I really do think that about both of them. I think both of them have amazing strengths. And I think it's especially important that they run against Ken Paxton, because I think that makes the race a lot more winnable.
Speaking of Texas, and this is a total side note, but they're installing lights along the Rio Grande and Big Bend National Park. I don't know if you've seen this. And Big Bend I wrote about it in my reality TV days. It's a designated dark sky area. It's a beautiful, beautiful national park. It's one of the only national park with an entire mountain range within its boundaries. And they're putting up fencing. They're doing stadium lights. There's 100 or so people a year who cross the river there. Billions of dollars. And this is just the optics of all of it. It is, they are not helping their cause for November.
No, they're not. And they can't stop it. Like this, Stephen Miller's not going to let them abate on any of their cruelty. They're continuing to do it around the country. And, a lot of these are communities where, especially on the border, I have friends who live in border communities. Border communities are very safe. Very safe. And people cross back and forth. There's an incredible amount of commerce between Mexico and the United States. And a lot of people move back and forth. And, what you've seen is just this crackdown. And I think there were people who actually thought, well, he means what he says is he's going to go after the worst of the worst. That's never what they meant. Stephen Miller said early on, this is going to be the biggest infrastructure project in American history. What they're undertaking. And now what we're seeing is they're trying to build these concentration camps around the country, which is so interesting. And I use the term concentration camps because that's what Andrea Pitzer used, who she wrote a book on concentration camps. She's an expert, and I've read everything she's been writing recently. She's brilliant. But what's been interesting is you're seeing like Senator Roger Wicker and Senator Marsha Blackburn pushing back against having these facilities in their states. And I'm like, you voted for it. Last year when you voted for the big ugly bill, you gave Stephen Miller $50 billion to do this. So you paid for it. And I think that there's a growing backlash to that money. That money wasn't discussed during the debate. It was a focus on Medicaid, rightly so, I think, to a large extent. And all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, these people have a lot of money to do some really ugly things. So someone like Mike Lawler, and my favorite is Representative Salazar from Florida, who she's bemoaning this horrible thing that's happening to immigrants. She just did an event on the Hill with religious leaders to talk about how awful it is. Like, you voted for all of it.
Right.
You literally voted to make this happen.
Yeah.
Look, this is just one thing. That's their solution to the housing crisis.
Yeah.
Warehouses. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Joe, I'm wondering, because it does not look like this war with Iran is going to wrap up, within the next couple of days, this could drag on. Do you think that this is a factor that we need to be watching for in these upcoming Democratic primaries? Because, as we've seen, I know, you were there covering things back during the Iraq War. It took a while, but that became a huge dividing line in the Democratic Party with the different responses. Do you think that may have the ability to do the same thing in some of these upcoming primaries for the midterms? I think it's going to be interesting, and I think, and you both were talking about it earlier, I think this is happening on such an accelerated timeline. I mean, think back to 2002, the vote on the war in Iraq. Right, back when we used to do such a thing with Congress. Yeah. Dick Gephardt was the House Minority Leader. I think he was standing behind George Bush when he signed it. Hillary Clinton, John Kerry. Most of the Democrats who were running for president voted for that because they thought that was the way to go. And then by the time the election hit, you had John Kerry saying, I was for it before I was against it, which, and I think it's interesting because this is one of those issues, I think, where there's,
like sometimes there's a difference in the way the Democrats approach things based on age, which is just a real thing, and how they've been along. A lot of the people who've been around for a long time remember that very well. So they remember how it played out. And they also knew that Bush built a case for it. Trump has not built a case for it. And I think also the younger members, the ones who are more grew up, under Bush and under Trump, fully understand how dangerous it is. So it'll be interesting to see which Democrats, and there'll probably be a few who decide that it's okay to side with Trump on this one. I don't think you'll see anything like we did in 2003, 2002, and 2003 when it split the party. I think it's going to be, people are going to be much more aggressive. And again, it's part of this whole, I think we talked on State of the Union night, the great speech that Abigail Spanberger gave, and she was really talking about costs and affordability, but she also talked about chaos and corruption. And I just think it adds to it. I was looking at the headlines before we came on. The headlines in the Post and the Times, they were all talking about, the war widens, the war spirals, we're sending more troops to the Middle East. This is, I think we are in dangerous times. We have a leader who cannot make the case because there is no case to make.
That's exactly right. There's no case to make. There was never an objective, and that is patently transparent. And Joe, I want to talk to you for another 3 hours. Can we just block off the afternoon and do this thing and just figure it all out, and then we'll go about our business? I would love to have you back on this week, maybe to talk about the elections tomorrow, if you have any space.
I'd be happy to do that. I love talking. Susan was always one of my favorite guests on SiriusXM Progress. We talked many times, and I love these kind of conversations. And I'll just tell you, if I wasn't doing it with you, my dog would be listening to me ranting about all of this right now too. And he gets a little tired of me. There's one member I want to just give a shout out to. I think keep an eye on Representative Jason Crow. I think from Colorado. I think he was an Army Ranger. I think he's giving some of the clearest messaging right now. He's in terms of what's going on with Iran, but also in terms of dealing with accountability. And I think I've been very impressed with Representative Crow.
Yeah, and he was, of course, one of the 6 members of Congress who was targeted by the Trump administration for that PSA they put out to members of the military, reminding them that they don't have to follow orders that are illegal. And of course, Jeanine Pirro, the one of Trump's prosecutors, failed to secure an indictment against him and the other 5, including Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, who's my senator in Michigan. So he's definitely someone for us to keep an eye on. He's been on Lincoln Square a couple times, and we'll look forward to talking with him again, and with you, Joe. Well, thank you for taking time, and we will look forward to checking back with you, throughout this midterm season.
Sounds great.
Great.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. Well, if you're just joining us, I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. Sam Osterhout is my partner in crime. He's our executive producer. We were talking with Joe Sudbay, who hosts State of the States on SiriusXM Progress, dipping into some of the crucial midterm elections. We also talked a little bit about what the current state of play is with our newly budding war in Iran. And that will be something that we will definitely be talking more with you this week. We will have ongoing coverage. Sam, I'm really looking forward to Bobby Jones's show tomorrow, Anchor Watch. He's been with us all weekend long to give us his expertise as someone who spent a couple decades leading forces in the Middle East. He will be giving you up to the minute analysis of what's going on. And Naira Huck will be joining him as well, former diplomat and a journalist who's an expert on foreign affairs as well.
And I think, Saturday morning when I woke up and realized that it had happened, I wasn't sure. I knew that we were going to start this war this weekend, but I didn't know if it was going to be Friday or Saturday. My first call was to Bobby because, it's, you read the news, you read the movements, you see what ships are there, what's happening, what's being deployed, but he reads those tea leaves. Right. And it really is this, like, he can connect all of these dots and say, oh, this is what's happening. His mind is incredible. I'm really excited for that show.
Yeah. We've also been having live dispatches from Ukraine, the war that we are not doing much to aid. Stuart Stevens is back there on an aid mission. He has spoken with us several times over the last week, and we're looking forward to hearing more from him. And, I thought his dispatch yesterday, putting it in perspective about how the U.S. is doing nothing to aid this fight for freedom and democracy, relatively nothing, versus starting this war with no objective in Iran. I mean, that was a really stark contrast, I thought.
It really was. As of right this moment, Stuart is scheduled to go live with Simon Rosenberg tomorrow on Hopium Chronicles. So keep an eye out for that. That's scheduled right now for 10 a.m. Tomorrow, and Stuart will be reporting from Kyiv.
And of course, one of the last times he was there, the power had gone out, and so it's always subject to the conditions on the ground. But really hoping that we can definitely hear from him and Simon tomorrow. Two people that you definitely want to hear from in these times.
Yes. Who you got on First Draft?
I have Christopher Mathias this week. He is a longtime journalist. He has a new book, To Catch a Fascist, which is talking about what's going on in right-wing extremism. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. And I know over the weekend, we had some great conversations with authors. Both Mark Engler, who wrote the book on social organizing, which is so apt in these times. And you had a great conversation as well.
Yeah, man, Lee, that was an incredible, and look, like I was my mind was blown. I've been reading and talking with the author Osita Wanavu about his book that, we interviewed him a few months ago, and but on democracy and the case for a second founding and all of these kinds of things. And Professor Lee, his whole underlying thought is that democracy is based, its base layer is accountability. And right now that is so prescient. It is the thing that we are absolutely lacking. If we can't hold the people we elect to account, then what are we doing?
Yeah. I think we've talked about this before, but I think, doing a Lincoln Square book club, and let us know in the comments. Yeah, let us know if this is something of interest to you. I mean, we get comments from you. I know that you really enjoy hearing from some of the brightest thinkers out there, the best authors, and hearing from them directly. But let us know if you'd like us to devote a show to that. Maybe we can all, read along together, do some sort of a group discussion. That's something we've been talking about.
I love it.
Because, I know at this point, we're scattered all over the country. Yesterday, we were getting comments from Germany and all over when Bobby and I were on. But this is a way, if we can't be in each other's living rooms, maybe we can all read the same book and talk about it. Yeah,
I love it. I really want to do that. So everyone, why don't you put your ideas, what books you'd want to treat, or and maybe let's just do it. Let's send something out. We'll work on that this week and figure out a date in the coming month or so to have our book club.
Sounds good. Well, our weekly assignment, our call to action for everyone this week, tell your member of Congress, yes, we do want a vote on the War Powers Act. You can click on this code that'll bring you right there to our site. I think we've got the graphic for it as well that tells you that Trump cannot just do this unilaterally. Congress is still there. Even though I know maybe your member of Congress supports this war, maybe they've given a tepid statement. They need to hear from you because Trump has. This is not the first time that he has been sending our troops into war. I think we can say at this point it probably won't be the last. But the fact that he is totally cutting Congress out of the process and he is unilaterally deciding to do this. We can't normalize this. And now is the time for us to go ahead and let our senators and our members of Congress know exactly what we think.
I mean, he's crossed 1 million red lines, right? And we have to be able to hold our electeds accountable, and that's on both parties.
Absolutely. So it does not matter if you were represented by Democrats, Republicans, they need to hear from you because as you can see, if this is not something you support, you are not alone. Only 27% of people support this war, and they should know that we are watching them and to see that they will assert their rights to hold this administration accountable.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here and joining us this morning. Stay with us again for our ongoing coverage of the war in Iran. Sam, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Susan. Always so fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye all.